COMM to do a lecture for us regarding fashion industry and business opportunities in Japan.
Okay. Hello everyone. So I'm here today to introduce the COMM magazine. So I'll talk a bit about what we do as an online fashion magazine, a bit about the Japanese fashion industry from our experience and perspective, and some possible challenges you might face starting a business in Japan. So first of all, a bit about myself. I'm editor-in-chief of the COMM magazine, and I studied at Sophia University of London. I did a BA in Japanese for 4 years. I studied at Waseda University for 1 year on my year abroad, and I'm currently at Gakuen University with these guys at the back. Hi. And I'm doing a master's in the Global Fashion Concentration Program. It's a master's in English at Gakuen. So I'm gaining an academic perspective of, fashion industry, fashion media, everything at Gakuen currently. I just felt that it was important to have an academic background as well as personal experience in creating this magazine, because you have to sort of understand the theory and depth of fashion if you're going to project a certain image of fashion to a wider audience. So, this is just me in 2016. So I worked at 6% Doki Doki. This is the shop in Harajuku. As you can see, very colorful, very sort of what we associate with Harajuku of the probably like 90s and early 2000s, super colorful and in your face and bright, and then, the outfits as well, sort of very like colorful, lots of patterns and prints. It's like the brand is especially known for its patterns and prints, that kind of thing. And I was a staff member there for my year abroad, and then I worked there for another 6 months from 2017 to mid-2018, and then moving on. So this was taken last year. So my style has gradually progressed away from, I don't know, maybe I'm going backwards, into the more colourful, but still sort of print-based, sort of Harajuku-inspired look, but sort of trying to elevate it into something a bit more mature, I think. So, a bit about the COMM magazine. So I created this in 2018. Yeah, 2018. And we currently have a staff of about 25 people, all volunteers, and they're based all around the world. So we have a Tokyo team, some based in London, Germany, Spain, America, etc., etc. We all just communicate online. So the fact it's an online magazine and communicate online, it's very easy, and we don't have to meet each other in order to sort of communicate, which is really nice. So our team is comprised of translators, writers, people that go to events on our behalf and to take photos for us, social media, and photographers, like anything under the sun you could think of. So this picture, I chose it to sort of represent what we as the COMM try to portray. So we have someone in kimono, someone very like Harajuku fashion, new, and then very, I don't know, like psychedelic kind of trippy. So we have just anything you want to express at the COMM, we let you express it. There's no rules, there's no boundaries. We're just all about who you are as a person and wanting to share your creativity with other people. So the COMM magazine is translated into 6 languages: English, German, French, Spanish, Japanese, and Italian. I missed out Italian, sorry. And the reason for that is I wanted it to be accessible to everyone. I often find that articles about Japanese fashion are written in English only. And if you're writing about a person, if they're Japanese, they don't understand what you've written about them. It could be inaccurate. You don't want to spread that sort of misinformation. So in order to prevent that, I wanted everyone to be able to understand what's being written about them, and also so that other people could understand clearly what, you know, is being written. Because if your native language is in English, some things might be lost in translation visually. So we have everything written and proofread by native speakers, and not everyone is like particularly versed in Japanese fashion, but through doing translation they learn a bit more and how to sort of take on that technical language and apply it to their translation. Our main sort of underlying premise of the magazine is cultural mediation. I'll just read you our mission statement, which will put it better than I can. There's a gap in communication between the international Japanese street fashion community and the Japanese community, and we wish to become the bridge in between. We aim to do this by creating content that introduces one world to the other, by taking advantage of our international team and using techniques of cultural mediation. Some ways to achieve this are by featuring articles that show part of Tokyo that the international community may not be aware of, providing context into why certain fashion trends in Japan arise, and elevating those voices, as well as feeding this back to the Japanese community by translating articles about international features and opinion pieces into Japanese. The flow of information back and forth between the various communities allows for a lively creative economy that sustains innovation and inspiration. So, through sort of visual exchange and obviously language, we're able to understand one another more clearly. And so I feel like it's my duty as sort of the visual editor to be able to portray this feeling across to the reader. Not only through our language, we try and create a consistent narrative throughout each theme, but also in sort of collaboration with that narrative, we want to create a visual theme, a visual narrative that's not portraying, you know, what's particularly considered Japanese street fashion. We want to create a well-rounded and sort of just a well-rounded sort of view of Japanese street fashion, one that's not particularly pink or this way or that way. So we do that by sort of removing the language barrier, or the possible language barrier that could arise through our translation. And in this way, we facilitate sort of creative collaboration between makeup artists, between models, between artists, between anyone we can think of, because we have that ability to go beyond the language barrier just through our team and also just through the magazine itself, so people can appreciate other people's art. So when we do photo shoots, for example, I make sure that our team is sort of kind of as diverse as possible. So behind the camera is usually us, our team is quite diverse, and also we incorporate Japanese people too, so our photographers are generally Japanese. So you get a well-rounded perspective. Hi. Harajuku is there. So maybe you saw this documentary from Refinery 29 a while ago. It went viral, and for me this was just an example of sort of misinformation being spread about Japanese street fashion. It took a very sort of niche community and exploited them with a sort of preconceived bias. So if you aren't familiar, this is Kua Oyasumi, and the other person featured in the documentary was Bisco Ezaki, and they spoke about the topic of the style of yami kawaii. And the topic of yami kawaii and menhera has been sort of coming up in like Japanese street fashion, mostly in like Western communities, and Western communities believe it's a way to sort of improve their mental health through fashion. So by expressing themselves visually with sort of dark motifs like knives, nooses, like even razor blades, that kind of thing, it's saying that I'm taking ownership of my mental health, these things cannot harm me, that kind of thing. And the narrative surrounding these figures in this documentary was that they are sort of a loose cannon, and they're inspiring people to commit suicide, and they're kind of unstable. And having met Kua myself, I can tell you that is not a fact. She is perfectly fine, and she, although in the documentary it appears that she is the sort of originator of this style of yami kawaii. In fact, when I asked her what is yami kawaii, she couldn't tell me. So it just felt like it was another one of those things. We have given labels to Japanese people and Japanese styles, and through documentaries like Refinery 29, you don't take the time to actually sit down and ask, maybe in Japanese or something was lost in translation, something is lost and it goes viral, and then everyone has this weird misconception of, you know, that crazy Japan image that we all probably know and are aware of, and it's just not the fact. So the COMM aims to sort of dispel these myths and present things for what they are. This is another image from 2010 or 2011. This is 6% Doki Doki. They did a worldwide Harajuku tour. They went to Paris, LA, everywhere trying to spread the message of kawaii. And the founder of 6% Doki Doki is Sebastian Masuda, who was, I worked for this brand briefly in 2015 and 16. And he's considered by many to be sort of the godfather of kawaii and kawaii culture since it sort of grew in the 90s. And this is his brand, 6%. And this is the kind of, again, the image of Japan that we have that was perpetuated in the 90s and early 2000s of this bright, over-the-top, sort of female-led Harajuku. And again, this may be true of the 90s and the early 2000s, but it is not so much the truth now. So again, with the COMM, we do represent these people because this may be a picture from 2011, but this sort of style does continue to exist. But we do highlight all the other subculture styles, you know, everything else, and try to regain some sort of present, like this is the present style, this is what's happening now. Yes, we can know and love and appreciate this, but let's all be aware of the current situation. And Harajuku is dead. So this came up, I think, in 2017, around when I was writing my BA thesis. And it came with the ending of Fruits magazine by Shoichi Aoki, when he was quoted to say there are no more cool kids to photograph in Japan, which again was taken out of mistranslated. He did not say, well, he did say there are no more cool kids, it's just that they're not coming into Harajuku. Then they don't see the need to come to Harajuku to be photographed, to be recognized, to be known anymore, because there is an online presence. You use Instagram, you use Twitter, whatever, all the social media. So you don't need the aspect of validation from Fruits or from these street snap magazines to be considered fashionable in street style anymore. That's just not the case, and it's moved on. So when, again, this blew up viral, so sort of journalism latching onto this crazy Harajuku, you know, we're not seeing these crazy street styles anymore, therefore Japanese Harajuku style is dead, when in fact it's not the case. It's more toned down, possibly. It's located to other areas like Shimokitazawa, Koenji, Kichijoji, Shibuya. It still exists, it's still around, but it's not in the form that we know and expect, I suppose. So these are some visuals from our magazine. This is from our latest issue. Our latest theme is tech. So every issue we choose a theme and we create concepts and photo shoots around that theme. So these are from part one of our issue. So we break it down into parts to create a sort of story and flow to the issue. And this one is like fashion through time. So here we have a shop girl from the shop Roulette, which was a pop-up shop, and their style is considered to be post-gyaru. It's a different form of neo-gyaru, which appeared in the 2014, led by Lisa Ueno. It's not got that like wide-eyed makeup that gyaru is really like associated with, and no coloured hair either. So post-gyaru is sort of like an evolution of gyaru. This is a reinterpretation of sort of an 80s inspired image of the future. This is Satellite Young, and they're again 80s inspired, and yes, this is a man wearing a television on his head. Interesting. And this was taken in a karaoke booth in Shinjuku. They're a pop group and they're inspired by all things 80s. And then the final picture is part of a mixed media shoot we did. We used 5 different cameras to show how technology impacts fashion. So this was taken on an iPhone 7 using the Fuji app, and it created a sort of vintage effect. So this is basically how we try to go about putting into practice what we preach about cultural mediation and cultural exchange. And as you can see here, we have I try to create a very sort of, diverse mix of people. So we have both Japanese and international faces to show that you don't have to be Japanese to be authentically into Japanese street fashion. There's, we've gone beyond the border of that. There's no sense of this or that kind of thing. We can appreciate a sort of mix and hybrid kind of culture. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve here. So this is two of our events. Here we did an event in Shibuya in an edge of building. We created a fashion show, and each model had their own style. So here we have Ichika in raver style, I think. She's very loud and proud about it. And we had kimono and very sort of typical Harajuku, maybe more toned down, and various other various other styles, even someone that remade kimono. So people that definitely they can get a visual of what we're about and what we do, and it's fun to do. It's not so much preachy. It's good to put on a fashion show. And actually our background music was Dizzy Rascal. I'm from London, so it was important to me to have that London aspect, because I also feel that London is very accepting and diverse, so it's just another level of our diversity. And this is a gallery we did, and actually these are all my clothes. It's quite fun to have them on display, and for people to ask me, oh, who's the artist? I mean, it's me. So each item of clothing, it was to represent a previous issue theme. So we did a cyber issue here. So this was all vinyl and, colourful and plastic. And then we had neo-trad, so in that issue we featured Lolita style, which is a sort of, I guess, a modern take on a traditional style, because Lolita is based on Rococo fashion from France. So this garment isn't Lolita, but it does have elements of vintage retro feel, and it's kind of 70s and flowy, I felt. So that's the garment we used to represent neo-trad. Over here we had, what was this, Adria? Therapy? Okay. Oh yes, we had therapy. So therapy was about sort of how we tackled the mental health within fashion sort of thing. So we have sorry, not sorry, I'm not apologizing for who I am. And here you can't really see, but there's nurses featured on the tights. So it's how to express yourself, I guess, taking on a way that's not so abusive, I guess, not featuring razors and sort of violent imagery. And finally over here, this was for Kawaii Revolution. So that issue was quite important to me, because it was again it showed a starting point of where fashion was in our perception, and those people within that fashion and how they've evolved from since they started wearing alternative fashion. So for example, maybe I can scroll back. No? No? Okay, it's stuck. Oh, it's me. Hi. It's stuck. In this photo, this girl Yuka she was a sort of legendary shop girl, because I don't know any other country that people who work in retail have this sort of status about them. So if you worked in 6%, you had this sort of status about you, so people would go to you for like fashion advice, they would copy you, and 6%, because it was so prolific to be the start of like what is Harajuku fashion, if you worked at 6%, you were quite well known. So she was quite legendary for having worked in 6%, and currently she is a dancer at Kawaii Monster Cafe. So her style has sort of like remained pink, but sort of she's grown up and not exactly grown out of it, but she's just matured with the style. So in that issue we sought to explore how fashion changes over time, and people within the subculture, how their fashion changes over time also. Okay. Is anyone here particularly looking to enter the Japanese fashion industry? Yes? No? Yep? Okay. So I have sort of like personal experience just having worked in the shop as shop staff, and usually it wouldn't come with that sort of weight. Imagine if you worked in Topshop or something, or H&M. I wouldn't know, but I don't think you'd gain a quite deep understanding of a particular like nation's fashion industry from having worked in H&M. Obviously you'd learn more about how the retail industry works, but I was sort of invited to events and asked to model for certain brands and represent like the face of like Harajuku sort of. So it kind of allowed me to experience what Japan's inner workings and how the fashion industry actually works here. And I feel like I just have an advantage because I speak Japanese. Like I have a sort of understanding of Japanese culture, having studied it and worked here for a while. And it just became obvious to me while working there that, again, it wasn't being represented well by sort of outsiders to the community, saying that Japanese fashion is this, Japanese fashion is that. What you see at Fashion Week is actually in part fabricated. I know some people that, I'm sure this happens in London, Paris, Milan, whatever, but a lot of people, they dress up, they're sponsored by Gucci, they are driven to Shibuya Hikarie, snapped, driven back, change, go back. So it's just it's not them, it's not authentic, and it's not what you would expect from street snaps. And these people are featured in Vogue, and then Vogue go and tell you these are what the people on the street are wearing, when it's just a fabrication. And in fact, general street style just became that way also, with even Fruits going down that road of seeking out people who work in shops and who are known to work in shops because they're the face of Harajuku, and not just people walking around in that area who just happen to be fashionable, which is how it started. So it just it wasn't, very authentic, so I did basically. And finally, even I was involved in a sort of misconception kind of thing when I was featured in ID's Vice, which was, again, I was interviewed by someone, and the way it was kind of portrayed, again, fit into that narrative, and I didn't enjoy being a part of it. So that's again why I decided to create my own publication to give a voice to the community, because as a member of that community I understand how we want to be perceived, and it's not part of that narrative of crazy wild Japan. So how to sort of get into the Japanese fashion industry, in my mind, is to stay present, stay active, and stay on the street. So when I was starting out, I would just honestly just walk around Harajuku and Shibuya in what I was wearing, and people would come up to me and ask to model or ask to style or ask something. People are very active outside, and you don't know until you venture out there. You can't stay in your own little bubble. Even from Instagram, it's good to network. Instagram is a very powerful, useful tool, but honestly, the best connections you make will be just going outside and events. There are events happening every weekend. You can find about them on Instagram. You can find about, they pop up last minute, and if you have some time, everyone like knows each other. So if you know one person, you know everyone. So if you know me, you know everyone. I'm joking. So honestly, just go to as many events, and doesn't matter how small they are, someone there will know someone else who knows someone else. It's how any industry works. And I feel like the sort of youth of Tokyo, they know what they're doing, and they know how to run events, and they know a lot of people. So it's not necessarily controlled by this faceless hierarchy that we don't see of like older people who've been in the industry longer. I feel like even students who are active and proactively take photos and try and do their own thing, they're still providing great value to the creative economy and the subculture. So absolutely go out and connect with students and connect with people, and do your best in that respect. And don't worry if I gained most of my experience through modeling, so even through doing photo shoots now, I know how to organize shoots, I know how to act. There's like a certain way you have to carry yourself in photo shoots, even at the end when you walk them to the door and thank them or that kind of thing. There's rules and regulations that you have to follow in photo shoot etiquette. So just gain as much experience as possible. And Fashion Week. Fashion Week is really important. So Fashion Week is still it's not as big as London, Paris, Milan, and I feel also the fashion there isn't pinpointed. So if you go, you can sort of still wear your own clothes, and people will appreciate it. And whereas in London there's a set aesthetic, there's a set look, there's a set feel about it that you have to sort of maintain the rules and go within. Whereas in Tokyo it's still quite youthful and still quite fun, and a lot of the runway shows are still open to the public, so as long as you turn up early, you'll have a ticket and be able to go in. And from there, I feel people are very open and very willing to help. So even if you approach a person who is a designer of a brand at Amazon Fashion Week, they'll be willing to help you. You just have to be open about it and just ask. So me and my team are looking to start our business in Japan, so the magazine is sort of the first step towards creating a sort of fashion-led business. So my biggest advice would just be to start. If you have an idea, don't dwell on it. I thought about it while I was in my final year of university, and 3 months later I'd taken action. That's the only way you can do it, because you learn through experience, in my opinion anyway. You don't know about your biggest challenges until you begin. So I wouldn't know I'd have to learn how to code websites and go to the back end of websites until our website broke 4 times. So I've learned how to code, I've learned how to edit photos, I've learned how to do videography, I've learned how to organize shoots, I've learned a lot of things just by doing. So if you have an idea and you feel like you're 60-70% there, I'd say at that point you need to put it into practice, and you just need to go for it, whether it's a magazine, whether it's a brand, whatever you want to do, or just general business advice. I just say it's best to just start. Build a team you trust, because they're the ones you'll be bouncing your ideas off of. They're the ones you'll be sort of how to handle with care how you go about your business practices. And if you don't trust them, then your business will just fall apart instantly. You need to be able to trust your team, and they need to understand your mission and be clear about it from the beginning. You need to understand exactly where you want to go, what you want to do, have a 6-month, 1-year plan, that kind of thing, present a roadmap, and everyone needs to be on the same page. And I feel like if you have your own departments as well, if people are delegated correctly, then it's always easier to know who's doing what, when it's happening, why it's happening. And yeah, I mean, even though we work in a creative industry and everything's, yeah, creative, we're having fun, paying pastel, yeah, we're still conducting a business. We still have to go about it the correct way. Yeah, just do it. So from personal experience, I took a reserved approach to sort of launching the magazine and sort of going about being a leader for this magazine. And I was taking everyone's opinions and sort of pushing down my own. I thought I knew in my head what I wanted to do, and when someone said something to me, I thought, okay, maybe I've got the wrong idea, okay, maybe it's not such a good idea after all. Just on everything, the website, the content, the photo, everything, I just squashed it down. And I didn't know how to manage a team, which was one of my biggest failings. And I ended up taking a backseat on my own project, which is possibly one of the worst things you can do. And unfortunately for me, it took a massive slap in the face to step up and actually become the leader of my own project again. Someone critiqued the entire thing, said it was childish, said it was bad, it was a bad idea, it wouldn't go anywhere, you're lame, you're stupid, blah, blah, blah. And it unfortunately took that for me to realize, no, you're wrong, first of all, and that I needed to step up as a leader, because I felt undermined as a leader, I felt humiliated, and I thought my team didn't believe in me, which was possibly the worst thing. But in the end, I had to get tough and just get on with it, because that's what you need to do in this sort of economy, whether it's a creative economy or whatever. You just need to sort of figure it out and get on with it. So through being able to learn how to take on critique, what to reject, what to accept, how to take a project and elevate it, in that way, I think after even a year, at this point now, I'm finally happy with our project. And again, like I said before, I had to get clear about our mission and what kind of content I wanted to produce, and not what someone else wanted us to produce. Because someone would look at our magazine and say, well, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're representing a small niche community, it's not going to expand, it's not going to go anywhere. But I know in my mind how to expand, I know how to go places. So if you have that idea about a project, you need to pursue it. Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge, if you decide to start your own project, is definitely taking on a team, how to delegate that team management, and just being confident enough in your own project to put your foot down when necessary and say, look, we need to take this path and it's going to lead us here and you need to trust me on it. And also networking, obviously, is very important through events. Japanese foundation industry is all about events and networking. So I said be the first, be the only, because actually I think we are the first, but currently not the only, because someone decided to step on our train, but we were the first sort of online, what was it? Online fashion something, I forgot. We were the first something, but in any case, I have sort of only been the only foreigner doing what I'm doing, and sort of taking that first step into this sort of industry is very difficult as someone who's not Japanese, because you're pretty much an outsider. Sometimes if you don't have quite a grasp of the language, of the cultural etiquette, it's quite difficult. But I don't think that should put you off what you want to do. Don't think about being the only, think about being the first. And the first is always a good thing, because you're the face of change and the face of innovation. So if you're not doing the business, you're just allowing someone else to take it from under your wings. So just try and, I know this sounds really bad, but do it as quickly as possible. So what it comes down to is knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses and knowing how your team can back you up and how you can balance each other out. So if you want to find us, we are the comm.online, and on Instagram we are the comm.online, and if you want to find out more, or if you want to join us as an intern, or if you have any interest in any sort of area concerning fashion magazines, then feel free to visit our webpage or just email us directly. So yeah, thank you, Sarah. Where is she? Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to talk, and thank you all for coming.
Well, I guess we can do like a question session if anyone has any questions regarding this topic. So, yeah. Anyone who has questions?
I'm interested in doing, like, if you're accepting an internship, but I'm not sure, because I don't have much experience in the fashion industry at all, and I'm just interested in learning more about that industry, just learning about the, I guess, like that area in general, but even if it's like that, would you be accepting an intern?
Yes. We are all about that. Yes. It's important because you can't go into everything immediately knowing everything. It's impossible. And everyone on our team is learning and growing. We've learned and grown, for over a year. So absolutely, we're open to anyone who is just open to learning, basically, and just willing to be flexible. That's it. Any question is fine.
We're hiring translators and writers.
Oh yeah. We're in desperate need of Japanese proofreaders and German translators. But of course, any other position is open as well on our site, or even if you feel like you have a particular skill that would help us out, we're open to whatever really is, as long as you're open.
Sorry, I may have missed it at the beginning, but did you talk, I might have missed, like, in terms of your readership or your readership, what kind of countries and how many people in parts of the world, what languages?
So quite interestingly, I was quite shocked. Most of our readers are in Japan. So yeah, we do have it translated in Japanese, and then our next biggest readership is US and UK, and then it varies. It's like Singapore. We even have Jamaica, France, and Australia. That kind. It just gets very random towards the end, but mostly Japan, America, and UK.
So, something I noticed that the former international director of Fashion Week, is very passionate about saying that there's not enough people writing about fashion, Japanese fashion, particularly in English, and presenting that, to people outside of Japan. So really, I guess maybe what, like some of the very few documentaries or the little bit that gets out that gets misrepresented or misrepresents quite often what Japanese fashion is about. That really there isn't many people that are actually writing, and there's such a huge demand for the people who actually want to know about what's happening in, I guess, but in specific subcultures, but also in fashion in general in Japan. So.
Yeah, I feel like it's the fashion writing has been dominated mostly by Misha Jeanette, who graduated from Bunker a while ago and now appears on Kawaii International. Apart from that, generally fashion writing about Japan has come from outside, from ID and Vice, and sort of projecting that again, stereotypical crazy Japan, they're all polite, blah 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 image. So yeah, there is a huge demand for it, and we're trying to fill it in the subculture senses.
I also saw that Refinery 29 did like mini documentary that they did about that whole like
yummy kawaii.
Mhm.
I just like, it was kind of annoying in a sense because it felt like they really didn't take their time or bother to do any research, and they just sort of did 1 or 2 interviews and then just were like jumping through assumptions and conclusions and then just presenting that. And it just felt so, I don't know, it just felt really misconstrued everything, you know? Like,
Yeah.
why does that happen so often?
I don't know, but even in that documentary, they used the wrong kanji for yummy. It was very confusing. They didn't use the byo, like it was a completely different kanji. So yeah, I think it's about shock value because you know, Japan already, luckily for them, comes with this crazy image. So they just have to extract a subculture that no one's really talking about, or even something that people are already talking about, and just add to it. For example, recently, I think the Chicanos of like Tokyo is like the new talking point. Suddenly they're finding this one girl who is interested in the Mexican subculture and is blending it with Japanese subculture, and it's like, wow, Tokyo is doing this crazy thing when apparently, well, in fact, it's just one person. And it's the same with the Refinery 29 thing, it's just 2 people. So I don't know why they've chosen Japan to just blow out of context. Maybe Korea is next on the list with the whole K-pop, like Hallyu wave. But yeah, I'm not sure, because it always seems to go back to the same sources, the same reference points, the same people that I know, like basically personally, and it's just them again and again and again repeating the same story and reinforcing the same narrative of pink kawaii Harajuku that we can't seem to escape from.
Sorry, that's another question.
Yeah.
You might have some from your experience of actually starting a fashion-related business in Japan. Do you get the sense that there's any kind of, in terms of people wanting to get into the fashion industry on various sides, that there are certain kind of, I don't know, like gatekeepers or that you need to be approved by, or you need to go through in order to get into there? And do you sense that that's any different for mainstream fashion versus some of the subcultures that the comm deals with?
Actually, I feel like the gatekeeping comes mostly from the Western community. Most people have told me no, people not actually based in Tokyo. The actual community here is very open, and even when we were starting and everything was like, we had no proof of or existence of even a magazine. We just went up to people and said, can we take your picture? And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it still happens. You know, we've managed to get shoots with massive people who have management companies, and all you do is send an email. So the gatekeeping, I feel, comes from people who are Western, who sort of own like Tokyo fashion kind of Instagram. They want to dictate what is Japanese fashion, because they say, if we post this, people think this is what is happening on the streets. People think these are the people who run the trends, kind of thing. So in that sense, yes, there is that gatekeeping, but from the actual community, it's very lovely and very open.
Right, so the gatekeeping only really happens in the industry once you get to the, I would say, like, not so much in the community, but
Yeah.
once it gets into the industry of people who are trying to have a hand in wanting to say who's predicting trends and who's...
It's just like a consumerism thing. They want to produce an image that they can sell to an audience. So if you can't create a palpable, sort of tangible idea, then you can't sell it. And so if you say Japanese fashion is a mishmash of all these things, you know, and because that's what it is currently, then what good is that to a business? So you need to be able to say, this is Japanese fashion, we're packaging it for you, please take a bite. And that's what I feel like a lot of these like Western businesses and journalists want to do with Japanese street fashion.
So for like interning, how often, like a week, would you want someone to go in or like help out?
Good question, Andrea.
As needed.
Yeah, it's like an as-needed thing. We're not going to demand you of your time. We're very flexible. We understand like you're a student and you have other commitments. So it would be like a case kind of depending on your schedule. And also depending on what kind of role you want to take. If you want to come on photo shoots, for example, I would do those probably like once a week. So maybe like one day out of your time, maybe if you wanted to, you could come to a photo shoot. Or if there's like another role as a writer, we could see. It depends, but we are students ourselves, so we're not going to say, this is priority. And if you're happy and you want to progress within the role, then we're happy to do that because, we're still small, but we're open to anything, basically.
So I would like to ask, how would you define that the way that you do your viewers worldwide? What kind of process you follow for creating the content itself?
So initially, I have quite a large global network, just from online, but also because I'm based in London, I can visit Paris quite easily. So I knew people in London and in Paris and Tokyo, and often people, when they would come on holiday to visit, they would contact me to basically hang out. Just from hanging out with people, you can just increase your network, because I think they saw me as sort of like an in to the Japanese fashion industry, considering I was already working within it. So just taking advantage of that network and just doing photo shoots with them and contacting them like, hey, can we feature you in this, article or whatever, and from that they would post it on Instagram, and people would become more aware of our presence, basically. So just networking.
Any other questions?
Sorry, just a bit again about the internship. But if we do want to do the internship and we're not sure what we want to do, that's quite my problem right now. I don't know what specifically we want to do. So I want to kind of learn.
We haven't.
Hi, I'm Dasha. I'm the HR director. So what you would do is you would contact us, you'll send us your resume, and then we will talk to you and we'll figure something out. Yeah?
Thank you.
It's fine. It's fine, honestly.
So thank you very much for coming as well and the presentation, and thank you all for coming as well to listen.